Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was very fortunate some years ago when you were serving in the leadership of the department to have the occasion to work together, and I think that went pretty darn well.
Went well, thank you.
And there were many folks that were hoping that you would be the individual named to serve as secretary this term. And so you arrived to a rather welcoming group, I think.
I have, thank you.
Over the years, and I knew talked about the importance of food safety and consumer interests as part of the mission of the department. And years back, there was a real balkanization of restaurant inspection requirements. Of course, we've got about 2,500 municipalities and 67 counties, and there was such a patchwork of local regulations that a consumer really didn't have much chance of understanding what was being put before them. That system was revised to adopt a uniform statewide standard that is enforced by the department, except for in the cases where localities volunteer that they wish to undertake it. And if they do so, it must be with ordinances that meet and do not exceed the state standard. Out in the western part of the state, there's been some rumblings where folks seem to want to go back to having individual municipalities, having individual standards and reporting. Personally, I think the uniform approach has served our state well, but I'm curious, would you contemplate going to a system where different towns and counties can come up with their own standards and reporting? Do you think that's a step forward or a step backward?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Well, first of all, I don't think it's a step forward. Right. I mean, having watched that over the course of 20 years, I think part of what we were experiencing, two things. One is that you really had no uniformity, both in terms of fees or inspection or a standard even that was recognizable by consumers. Right. So whether you're in Pittsburgh or whether you're in Harrisburg or in Gettysburg, you ought to know how the food establishment that you are enjoying is inspected, right? So when you look at that inspection report, it's uniform in its presentation, and the scales that are used to make that evaluation are uniform as well. So not interested in going back. The other piece that we were experiencing, and well, is that the local municipalities were giving things back to us. Right, so we've had a lot of municipalities that had said, listen, we just don't want to do this anymore. Would you please, Department of Agriculture, inspect our restaurants? And over the course of the last couple of years, we've picked up at least 1,200 different restaurants and establishments. And in that process, have identified this uniformity concern. So if we're bringing it back, there really ought to be a state standard for how our food is and food establishments are evaluated.
I certainly agree with you. I'm delighted to hear you still hold that opinion after having been away from the department and now coming back. I didn't know if that might have changed your mind. But I'd ask another question, which is the state has developed a pretty good system where folks can go online and access these inspection reports that you were referring to. Yeah. But not all municipalities participate. Right. Do you think the public would be better served if we had one place where consumers could know that whatever restaurant they were interested in Pennsylvania, they could look up the inspection report with one stop rather than hunting around the internet?
Yeah, that was the goal. We really wanted to have both uniformity in the inspection, but uniformity in the presentation of that to the public. Right.
That presentation is pretty darn important, I think.
Yeah, the presentation, is really important. I mean, some of out of all of that activity, the piece that resonated the best was the presentation to the public of what inspection grade was their food establishment, their favorite food establishment receiving, right? Because then you could engage people in this conversation about food safety, food handling. It fit together and certainly complemented the work of Penn State University and Cooperative Extension on food handler and certifications. So still believe that you need uniformity both in terms of practice and uniformity in terms of presentation.
Thank you very much.